Okay, so this video is about two preachers that are going against Shaykh at the, looks like they're at the Balboa Park in San Diego. They're getting into a discussion about Judas and the biblical account. If you check in the scriptures, there's a sequence of events that happen for Judas. Judas receives 30 pieces of silver for the betrayal of Jesus. Led the soldiers to Jesus where they commonly met. And Judas regrets doing that after he realizes that, it wasn't such a good idea. And he tried to return the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests. They did not accept it. Instead, they took the money and they did something with it. But first, Judas, afterwards, takes a rope and he goes and hangs himself, as you follow the scriptures. And then what happened is somebody had to have cut Judas down. Either they cut the limb or they cut the rope. But Judas's body would have had to have fallen, and that's what the Bible does show, that Judas fell to the ground and his body fell apart and his guts fell out. So, and then what the chief priest did with the 30 pieces of silver, they couldn't put it in the treasury, so they had to do something with it. And they bought the field, and it's the field of blood, and everybody in Jerusalem knew that this field was bought with that money, and it was bought in the name of Judas. So he's going to bring up the point that it looks deceptive that Judas was supposedly bought the field, but in the Bible it says the chief priest bought the field. There's not a conflict in there because the chief priest could not keep the money. So it didn't really belong to them, it belonged to Judas. And so when they bought the land, actually they bought it in the name of Judas because Judas owned that field and not the chief priest. Let's hear what the discussion is.
That I have sinned by betraying innocent blood, and they said that what is he to you? He threw down the pieces of silver, departed the temple, he threw the money away, and hanged himself. So what did he do with the money?
He threw it back to the
And then what did he do?
He hanged himself.
Okay. In Acts now it says, now this man purchased a field with the wages of iniquity. So what did he do with the money here?
He threw it to the priest.
No, that's not what it says. It says he
Okay, so they're both right. So the money was given back to the chief priest. The chief priest took the money. They couldn't put it in the treasury, according to the scriptures, what he's reading, and they bought a field. And this is what they're talking about.
purchased a field. Look, read it. No.
The money was used
This
to buy
man, no. The
Because
priest.
it says, no, the Bible says the priest bought the field.
Yeah, so he does. It does say that in Matthew 27, verses 6 to 8, it says it's not lawful for the chief priest to hang on to that money. It's blood money. So they bought a field with it. Judas is the owner of that field. He bought it.
This man purchased.
It's twisted.
Read it. You're twisted. Read.
I'm not twisted.
Now this man, not the priest, this man purchased a field with the wages.
And that's true. So Judas did technically own the land, even though he's dead after he committed suicide. Chief priest bought the land in the name of Judas. Judas still belonged to that money. The money was used to buy the field. And so technically they're both correct.
This man. No.
Yes,
See, you're twisting now.
No, you're
Because
twisting.
read the scripture. Read the scripture. I'm reading it.
The
This
priest,
man.
the money brought it.
Where does it say the peace brought it?
The money brought it.
Where does it say the peace brought it? Where does it say the priest
I
brought it?
don't know if
It says the priest bought it in Matthew 27, verses 6 to 8. So I wish the guy would have brought that up. It's very clear.
I don't know.
No, but read. Now this man purchased the field. In this verse here. This man, not the priest.
He did.
Okay, and then how did he die? And falling headlong.
Right.
No, where?
The road.
No, where's the book?
No.
No. What's
Right.
headlong?
Let me answer.
Go ahead.
Don't interrupt me.
I didn't interrupt you. Go ahead. I am.
when he hanged himself.
Mhm.
The rope broke. And
Where is that?
Okay, it doesn't say the rope broke, but you would know that the people did not want a dead body hanging from this outside the city gates, and that eventually somebody would cut him down. So they either had to cut the rope or they cut the limb. And then what would happen? The body would fall. So if he was over some distance falling, that there would be an impact. And of course, something would happen. Either his skull opened up or his body opened up, which is really what the scripture says. And he has a problem with, if headlong means gravity turned his head around, and he has a problem with headlong being that his body opened up. If his body was decomposing, it'd be really easy for even a head blow that his stomach would open up if it was weak in that respect.
You're breaking up here. You're making it up. You're assuming. You just said it's assumed. Earlier you said it's in scripture. Now you're saying it's assumed. Where is the scripture of the rope breaking? That's all I'm asking.
he fell.
Something had to happen with the rope. Either over a period of time it decomposed, the rope decomposed, got weak, the body decomposed, the limb decomposed. Something happened. Judas is not there any longer, so we can assume something happened with the body and that it fell. And if the Bible doesn't contradict, it actually just explains it. So Uthman is really barking up the wrong tree here.
Now, what does headlong mean? What does headlong mean?
Headlong, head first.
Head first. So when you said by gravity you fell straight down, that means you didn't fall headlong.
So if you cut the branch, the body could have swinging back and forth, it would spin, you could have headlong, and still the body would break apart and the guts would fall out. So Uthman is just splitting hairs.
If a rope breaks, you would not fall headlong. When you're falling headlong, you're in motion, your head goes ahead. This verse has nothing about hanging himself. It has nothing about a rope breaking or a branch breaking. It says he bought a piece of land with that money and falling headlong.
So he's looking for some type of scientific description from Acts to explain, that somehow headlong, there was a spinning motion and all that would happen. And you can't get that. You can make the assumption that if someone cut the limb or someone cut the rope, that it's not going to be a direct fall, that there's going to be some motion, wind or what have you, the gravity would make the body, spin in some respect, and that he could hit either head first, stomach first, whichever, and his body would open up.
Let me ask you a question.
Give me a second, Quran.
Okay, so now he's changing the subject. Uthman feels like he's won on this, but he's actually lost very clearly. So we just need to get to Matthew 27 verses 6 to 8 explains it. Okay, so Matthew 27 verses 6 to 8 explains this situation. It says, the chief priest picked up the coins and said, it is against the law to put this money into the treasury, since it is blood money. So they decided to use it to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. And that's exactly what happened. And then they have called this field of blood to this day, in verse 8. So it's very clearly that what happened is they bought the field in the name of Judas because the money belonged to Judas. It's not that there's a contradiction. There is no contradiction. It's very clear. The field was bought in the name of Judas, and Judas owned the land. The chief priests, if you would ask them who owns that land, they would say it belongs to Judas. It did not belong to the chief priest because it was blood money.